Ladies and gentlemen, we are live once again on neighborhoodnewsstudio.com. We have a great lineup ahead of us today. We got Mr. John O'Loughlin, McDuff Lives, kicking it off at 11 a.m. We have Research Roadshow with George Webb at 12 p.m. We have Protect the Nest with Tara Starr, Amber Connor, and Carol McIntosh coming on at 2. And after that, Addy Ads makes his debut at 4 p.m. all Eastern Standard Time. Well, Mr. O'Loughlin, take it away and have a great show.
Well, thank you, Andy DeBala, and thanks to everyone at Neighborhood News Studio, and congratulations to Addy Ads for joining, should I say, adding his name. Sorry about that to the roster here, and I look forward to seeing him, and perhaps he and I will get to do some work together soon. I hope so. Let's see, is my camera a little out of focus? I'm just not sure. I guess it's all right. What do you think, Andy?
It looked good before the show. It may just be a touch out of focus. Here, I'll
No,
go
I'm gonna
full
stick with.
screen and just give you a little plug here while you adjust that. You can find John at screamingospreys.com. You can see the ospreys are growing in the nest on the live stream. They're getting bigger and bigger every day, just like Neighborhood News Studio and our Osprey Nation that we've put together here. You can also find John's live stream and all the work he does live at screamingospreys.com, and you can also support him by buying his book that he wrote about his dad, McDuff Lives: The Life and Untimely Death of Thomas F. O'Loughlin Jr. And don't forget, you can also become a Patreon and get some extra content from John on the side. I see you got your camera ready now, sir, so I'll let you take it away.
All right. Thank you, Andy, and appreciate that. And thanks for the kind endorsement. I received a Patreon check um, at the beginning of April, as you know, and that that little bit of money, it does add up, and appreciate it very much. Those of you that have joined the Patreon, I don't post a lot over there. Mainly, it's just an avenue for folks if you want to support the channel, and I try to put all of my content here on my website and on my YouTube channels. I'm going to be adding Odyssey soon. I have BitChute. If you want to check out my archives, that's where we officially archive at BitChute at McDuff Uncensored. So if there's something you'd like to see that maybe disappeared from YouTube, you'd probably find it over there. At least going back about 2 years. Before that, unfortunately, YouTube struck about 900 videos. Well, I still have them, but I won't be able to get them back without posting them one at a time, and that's just too big of a burden. So anyway, that's where we're at, and thank you all for being here, Kathy Sue, and all the son Carol M. And Carol M, I'm excited about you guys' show. That's very cool. Protect the Nest was, of course, the very theme that we came up with back in 2019 when we started our Osprey mission and protecting the nest. That's why the Osprey is screaming, because we, in our human ways, had sailed up a little bit too close to the nest in our little boat, and she got angry. So we took a picture of her, and that's our inspiration for the Screaming Ospreys. Thank you so much for being here, and thanks for creating more and more stuff. I mean, this is what's great, is that everybody's got some creativity in them, as well as some unique perspective. Well, maybe that's my pivot over to my content today: perspectives on Ukraine, and we're all screaming, yes, indeed. And the Ospreys are back here at Mystery Island. You're welcome to come by and check them out. They scream. They do. They have a very loud yell that they exhibit whenever you get close to their nest. It's true. Well, you can see behind me some birds there. The birds like to hang out here at Mystery Island Studio. We filled up all the bird food nests last night, and the squirrels have visited us this morning. And my goodness, I think we're going to have to go out there and fill them up again today. Um, we don't feed the ospreys; they take care of that themselves. They go out fishing, and yeah, thank you so much for sharing that view. And we can't thank Catherine enough. Jumping Mouse, who is on Twitter as well as comments here in the chats from time to time. She's our webmaster or mess. How do you say that without getting in trouble? Mistress, madam. I don't think there's a good way to say that except for she takes care of our website, and the calendar is there every day if you want to know what's going on. 16:10 p.m. in London. So good to have you here too, London. Ah, thank you, Steph. Very nice to have you. And Audrey's here. Yeah. Oh, yeah. This is a beautiful, beautiful morning. And my tulips have been blooming. Um, daffodils still blooming. Um, and the azaleas are starting to come out. So it's fun. It's a beautiful day. Lots of rain. Rain. Does it rain in Ukraine? Yes, it does. Well, where shall we start? Let's start with an interesting question I raised, which is what's going on with COVID in Ukraine? What's going on with COVID in Ukraine? Okay. And to answer that, we're going to go to Dr. Google and say, Dr. Google, what's going on COVID Ukraine? And let's see if we can, oops, put that up there. Okay, this is just my Google page, COVID Ukraine. And we scroll down. New cases, April 7th, 2022, new cases 0, 7-day average 0. Well, maybe it's because they haven't been reporting, but the most of the fighting was in March. And in March, they were reporting, and you can see there's, somewhat of a spike there, right? A spike on February 14th, February 15th, and then it starts going down quickly, very quickly. Now, the scale of it is still very, very small, 40,000 at the top. 40,000 is the most that they've had since last summer, since June on this particular scale. So I think we can assume that COVID is basically gone from the Ukraine based upon the statistics. What do you think? Do you think the statistics are simply just not there because of the war? Or is it summer, like look at the thing back in July 4th. Before that, in the summer, there was none, 0 in 2021 in Ukraine, the whole country. But to have 40,000 cases in a country of 40 million people, and then the population can be quoted anywhere between 35 million and 55 million, but it supposedly is quite low right now comparatively due to the war, right? But suppose it's 40,000, then 40 million, okay? So 40,000 out of 40 million is not very many. What is that? Somebody do the math, 1 in 1,000, I guess. Um, all of a sudden makes a good point. Not planting is not good, and that's another great point to make about Ukraine. Let me go back over here to that page and let's see. Ukraine. COVID in Ukraine travel health notices from the CDC. If you must travel to Ukraine, make sure you are vaccinated and up to date with your COVID. Wait a minute, CDC. Wait a minute. Are you serious? So you're saying that if somebody wants to volunteer to go defend the Ukrainian people against the Russian invasion, that they have to get a shot first? Well, no. Um, Once again, is Ukraine barreling toward a COVID surge? Asked Jacob Stern back on March 25th. Well, this is the question. The main idea of universal healthcare, and that is the idea that we need to have healthcare everywhere. The main theme of that is that without sanitary conditions, without clean water, clean air, nutritious food, the immune system weakens. The immune system weakens, people become susceptible to disease. Now, over the past 5 weeks in Ukraine, a lot of people's immune systems have been weakened, right? But there's no surge. What can we learn from that? There's an awful lot of different directions you can go with that idea. What do you think? What can we learn from the fact that all the medical advice we get says you need to protect your immune system, and you need to do that by having clean water, a healthy environment, clean air, and healthy food, and a good night's sleep, right? But if you're in a war zone, you can't get any of that. You're lucky to get a loaf of bread. So all these people, supposedly, millions of people, the war zone is huge. We're talking at least 10 million people exposed to the war. But is there any reports coming in of pandemics, epidemics, hospitals overflowing with COVID patients? Zero. I find that very, very interesting. Hey, Kate Gowan's here. Hi, Kate. Yeah, well, that's an interesting bit of news. You say bad man Putin put the kibosh on lab leaks in Ukraine, meaning that those of us that have been kind of secretly hoping that the U.S. gets caught with its pants down in Ukraine by creating weaponized pathogens in these labs. Putin has put the kibosh on that. So if Putin won't go with it, then it's not going to be a story. It's just not going to be a story. So that's kind of disappointing to me personally. I was kind of hoping that you know the stories that we hear, the rumors that we hear about these labs would finally expose the labs generally. Fort Detrick and all of the horrific things that we've been investigating, and from for 4 or 5 years now, um, we've been working to try to expose a uh, a hidden biowarfare program run by the U.S. government or agencies of the U.S. government. And the theory seems pretty sound that, hey, those guys, they got kicked out of the U.S., so they went to the third world, and, Ukraine was convenient, and Hunter Biden and all of that, and said, yeah, here's some money. Why don't you put it right over here? And everybody goes, "Oh, I'll take that money. That looks really juicy. And yeah, you can put your stuff here. We don't care. Do whatever you want." Well, that's the theory. But yeah, don't forget their labs in Jakarta, Indonesia. Thank you. I didn't even know about that, but it makes sense to me. So yeah, if Putin's not going to go with it, then that story's not going to fly. I want to share with you another perspective. This one is a an attack upon the Russian Orthodox Church for opposing the vaccination of Ukrainians. Stick with me, it's pretty interesting. I'll just set that up so you can see it too. All right. Not as fast as Andy, but I'm getting better. The church, this is a publication called Ukraine World, obviously a Ukrainian publication, but I don't know anything more about it. So, maybe I should have done a little more digging, but I'm fascinated by this article. It's dated December 3rd, 2021. The caption is "The Church Against Vaccines: How the Russian Orthodox Church Opposes Vaccination in Ukraine." Now, by the way, although this article was written in December of 2021, it's clear that the heads of the Orthodox churches around the world have almost all succumbed to the put the kibosh on don't get the jab, and actually are out there promoting getting the jab now. But let's just indulge in this particular article for a minute here. Okay. While the development of COVID-19 vaccines has been an extraordinary success, there are some groups working to make the process of vaccinating people far more difficult. Well, you see the perspective, right? And as of 23rd of November, only 23% of Ukrainians have been fully vaccinated against, well, you know what, with around 6% having received one dose. In comparison, 42% of the world population has been fully vaccinated, with 11% having received a single dose. It is thus clear that vaccination in Ukraine has been going quite slowly. Okay, December 2021, vaccination in Ukraine, and it's still peaceful there, more or less, is going quite slowly. So if the vaccines are effective, then that might account for the fact that there's very low incidence right now. But if they didn't use the vaccines, then it doesn't account for the low incidence, and it raises questions as to why take it in the first place. Well, YouTube, please understand, I'm just speculating. This is just me thinking out of the box, trying to show different perspectives. I'm not a doctor, and I'm not trying to give anybody any advice. It's, I think, a violation of free speech to try to censor people that are simply providing different points of view. Okay, rant over. Okay. As one of the most crucial issues in the world over the past 2 years, vaccination has been used as a subject of various disinformation campaigns, particularly by Russia. The Center for Countering Disinformation of the National Security and Defense Council of Ukraine, yeah, that's a Ukrainian organization, right, recently analyzed the information landscape of Telegram channels, confirming that Russia has been undertaking information operations aimed at reducing the level of vaccination in Ukraine through multiple media channels, particularly through social networks and messengers. The campaign's messages have mostly concerned negative consequences of vaccination. In this regard, Facebook has become a platform for spreading misinformation and disinformation, as well as a tool for certain groups to protect influence in order to achieve political goals. Isn't that a weird perspective? Because from my perspective, Facebook has been censoring me and everybody else. But no, this article claims that Facebook has been facilitating the spread of what they call disinformation and disinclination to take the therapy, as Mark calls it. The activist network Avaz found that over 40% of the corona-related misinformation on Facebook was kept on the platform, despite Facebook being told that the social media posts were false. The Russian Orthodox Church as a tool for disinformation. Now, here's where I get hopeful again. I say, wow, the Russian Orthodox Church is a huge, huge organization that has lots and lots of followers, and when the followers are, I mean, these are religious followers. They're not just political followers. This is like, I will follow what my church tells me because I am a Christian and I want to be a good Christian. I want to go to heaven. So if the Russian Orthodox Church is saying no, don't do it, then I'm like, wow, that sounds like a great church to me. But here's and again, it's just my opinion, right? I could be wrong, probably totally wrong, YouTube. I'm wrong. Yeah, I'm wrong. But no, I'm just speculating. But the Moscow Patriarchate has played a very active role in projecting Russian influence in Ukraine, especially after the start of Russian aggression against Ukraine in 2014. Skipping down, as Ukraine has experienced an autumn spike in COVID-19 cases, well, we just looked at it, right? The spike was no more than 20 or 30,000 cases in a 40 million population, right? But they call that a spike, okay? An autumn spike in COVID-19 cases and deaths. More publications have started appearing on the union's website and Facebook page. For instance, the head of the representation of the Ukrainian Orthodox Church to European international organizations, Bishop Victor of Barishivka, declared that current developments around vaccination could be called a general rehearsal for the apocalypse. By the union, I believe they're talking about a union of different Orthodox churches speaking together. Just documenting here the fact that these Ukrainian Orthodox Church spokespeople on social media did, in fact, post these comments. And here's one: the Vinnytsia Diocese of the UOC, the Ukrainian Orthodox Church, urged not to discriminate against the unvaccinated. The church does not prohibit vaccination, but is concerned about restriction of the rights of the unvaccinated, the Diocese of Vinnytsia said. Wow. You know any churches in the United States that have said that? I mean, it takes courage. It takes, it takes belief. It takes a religious type of belief to stand against the tide in such an obvious way, and in a very exposed way too. Just some more. I can't even understand what they say. I don't read the Cyrillic alphabet. Not yet. I'm gonna learn it. I've got to learn it. But marches against compulsory vaccination took place on 3rd November in numerous Ukrainian cities. Wow, did you know that? Marches against compulsory vaccination took place on November 3rd in numerous Ukrainian cities, Zaporizhia, Odessa, Vinnytsia, Khmelnytskyi, and other places, Khmelnytsky, and other places. The Kiev protest attracted a particularly large crowd, numbering several hundred. Well, okay, several hundred. It's a large, I guess, for a sketchy place to live. The protest provoked lots of heated arguments online. What's wrong with that? How do you get to the truth without having discussions? Heated arguments will happen, should not be shut down. So what happened? What happened to the opposition by the Orthodox church leaders? Well, it's gone. Just like I guess Putin has no longer going to give us the case we wanted to prove. Maybe it just doesn't exist. Maybe there weren't any pathogens in Ukraine. But that's not believable considering the incredible research that's been done by people here at Neighborhood News Studio and Mark and so many other great researchers all around the world. It's just not credible. It's not believable. Now, I want to jump over to a different site. This one is not about religion. This one is about history and war. And it's called eStory. And I want to tell you a little bit about the site itself. Let's go over there and have a look at this YouTube site called eStory, eAstory. Now, eStory is a historian, and I think he has a thick but very easily understood accent, and he's really good at doing these battle scenes. See what I'm saying here? The Eastern Front. There's the Battle of Kursk, 1941. The Western Front. Here comes the invasion of Normandy by the Allies. The Battle of Kiev a month ago, animated. World War II every day with army sizes. And I'll tell you, this kind of thing, I get fascinated with it. I love to watch the divisions and the brigades and everything move around and see how they get encircled. And this tank versus tank battle at Kursk, these things are, major historical events that I find fascinating. And I think, even if you're not into military history, to watch one or two of this man's things. Now, if you don't understand about why Japan and China and what happened and what was the Americans' point of view going into 1941 and what was going on in China, he's done a great job with these. A couple of videos he did on the Sino-Japanese wars, which are so important to understand why we ended up in World War II. So there's something we can explore another time. But this one he posted 2 days ago. It's already got 100,000 views. So that means a lot of people are saying, "Oh, this man knows what he's talking about." I'll tell you, I don't think he's got it. I think he's wrong. But look at the way he analyzes it just from a military
5G home broadband powering your home.
Just from a military point of view. We get through this stuff here. And
Russian forces are building up on Ukraine's border. Both in Ukraine and Russia, people...
Before he starts there, you see his accent. It's really a lovely voice. Why Russia invaded Ukraine, and this is published on April the 6th. So, very up to date. Okay. Let me scoot back so we can catch the whole thing.
Forces are building up on Ukraine's border. Both in Ukraine and Russia, people think that this is a ruse because invading Ukraine would not be a rational move. Still, on February 24th, the invasion is launched.
Done.
So, why did Russia invade?
Hang
In
on.
this video, I will give you my theory. The video goes up.
Yes, Andy.
You gotta when you share the video, there's a little button that says share with audio. Make sure you're sharing it without audio because your video will play it through the roadcaster.
Okay, where's the button?
When you share the screen, when you go to share the YouTube channel,
Yeah.
it'll be in the bottom left corner of the box that comes up. Yeah, now when you come back, should be a blue check mark.
Sorry, I'm lost here. All right, let me go to the share box here. Choose what to share. Entire screen with a Chrome tab. Okay. I got it. Okay, I see it. Share tab audio, and I unchecked it.
Uncheck it. Yep. That's all you gotta do.
All right, and now let's try it again.
Ukraine and Russia, people think that
this is
early 2022. Russian forces are building up on Ukraine's border. Both in Ukraine and Russia, people think that this is a ruse because invading Ukraine would not be a rational move. Still,
have it in a second, guys. Okay, uncheck the little tab and share, and let's go back.
Early 2022. Russian forces are building up on Ukraine's border. Both in Ukraine and Russia, people think that this is a ruse because invading Ukraine would not be a rational move. Still, on February 24th, the invasion is launched. So, why did Russia invade? In this video, I will give you my theory. The video goes up in the beginning of April as the war in Ukraine has seemingly reached a stalemate. There are many videos on the internet about this conflict which look at the same events from different angles. My theory is that the 2022 Russian invasion of Ukraine was caused by two factors. I call them use force to make friends and why Putin forever. Use force begins at the end of the Cold War. At that time, Europe was divided between two factions, the Soviet bloc and the West European alliance. But the Soviet bloc collapsed and more than 20 nations in Eastern Europe were free to choose their alliances.
Okay, I'm going to stop there. Notice how he says the Soviet bloc collapsed in a passive voice. He doesn't say, the Western powers just took the Soviet Union down and destroyed it and handed it out to oligarchs. He doesn't say that. He just says, oh, well, it just collapsed. Okay.
They could choose between Russia and the Western nations. The alignments would be determined by three things: trade, development aid, and social models. First was trade. The East Europeans produced things, and they wanted to sell them to the largest amount of people with the largest amount of money. Here, the market size was everything, and the Western nations had much larger economies than Russia, which made them the obvious choice. The East European nations had to undertake radical economic reforms, and they needed much aid to catch up with other countries. The Western economies were larger and could provide much more aid to the East Europeans.
And just to stop for a second, I think this is absolutely right. In terms of what the people would be attracted to, the people of the Eastern European countries, given the choice between Western money and Russian frugality and poverty. It's just easy. You say, oh, well, they got all this good stuff, so let's go with the West.
The third factor was the social model. The East European societies had recently abandoned communism and needed to choose a new model according to which to build their societies. Here too, the Russian model of powerful oligarchs and the increasing authoritarianism was not as attractive as that of the societies of Western Europe.
Isn't that beautiful? The way he put that. The Russian oligarchs, the ones that we built, right? But anyway, they're there. They're oligarchs, and that means they're bosses. They're like mafioso dons. And no, you don't want to be under the thumb of a don, right? But then look at the image that he gives us of the West on that those powered roll around things with this little purse there and a and a goofy smile. Yeah, let's do that. Let's be Westerners. No mention of the church anywhere in this, isn't it interesting?
This made the East European states favor the Western nations, which resulted in half of them joining the European Union and the North Atlantic Treaty Organization. At the same time, Russia had only resources to attract Belarus into joining its institutions. But now,
attract Belarus into joining its institutions? I don't know about that. I think Belarus was never going to have a choice, was it? And Russia will not let go of Belarus. It would just destroy its chance of survival.
let's make a small detour and speculate on how the governments work. In the early 21st century, the United States invaded Iraq and Afghanistan, steps that are now considered to be mistakes.
Mistakes? Mistakes? I'm sorry there, Mr. E-Story, but those are not mistakes. Oh boy. See, there's a little naivete in him. He hasn't studied the politics of it. He hasn't studied the backstory, and he's speculating here. And let's listen some more.
The wrong decision might have been made because the militaries are biased towards the use of force. And the problem was that the US military had too strong an influence in the government. This made the United States lean towards launching the invasions, which might not have been the best political move.
Well, isn't that interesting? I find myself stopping. These are my speed bumps, right? When I'm reading a book and I have to stop and make a comment. But what to do with Iraq? What do you mean, what to do with Iraq? We're going to conquer Iraq. Are you serious? I mean, Iraq is a problem, so what do? No. Iraq is a prize to be captured. And as far as his little brief sentence that in America, the military had too much influence and seeks a military solution to everything. And that was why we made this great, quote, mistake, right? We made the mistake because our military was too powerful in the decision-making of our government. And it's got the civilians over there saying, no, let's not. It's a complete misreading of American politics and what happened in terms of Iraq that I think he's already got 200,000 views. Come on. This guy's work is influential, certainly in Central and Eastern Europe.
Well, in Russia, the military and the security services are effectively responsible for running the country. And this made Russia rely more on military and security services to solve its problems. Russia directed these institutions to secure its sphere of influence. The first operation was rather successful. After the dissolution of the Soviet Union, the new republics of Armenia and Azerbaijan began a conflict over contested territories. Although initially Armenia got the upper hand, Azerbaijan made an alliance with Turkey, which left the much smaller Armenia in a dangerous position. Russia saw this as an opportunity to use its military to expand its influence. Armenia was in need of protection, and Russia sent its forces to defend the country in return for Armenia joining the Russian sphere of influence. In the 2000s, the nation north of Armenia, Georgia, began pursuing closer ties with the Western nations, and Russia decided to use the military to bring that country into its sphere. The plan was to use the tension between the Georgian government and its two breakaway regions to inflict a military defeat on Georgia and cause a pro-Russian government to take power in the country.
Have you ever heard it put that way before? The revolution in Georgia, all of these Caucasus events from a different perspective. That's what we're doing today.
The operation was mostly successful. Russia was able to take full control over Georgia's separatist regions and halt Georgia's integration with the Western nations. But the invasion made many Georgians view Russia with hostility, and Georgia not only did not join the Russian sphere of influence, but also left the Russian-led institutions, which it already was a member of. Soon, another opportunity presented itself. The unrest of 2014 in Ukraine ended up with a Western-leaning government coming to power. This caused unrest in Ukraine's Russian-speaking regions. Russia deployed its military to increase its influence over Ukraine. It sent forces to help the pro-Russian separatists secure their territories against the Ukrainian army. Then Russia forced a deal upon Ukraine that these territories would rejoin Ukraine if Ukraine would be put in a position where it could not integrate with the Western nations.
All right, I got to stop again. Never heard it that way before, did you? What we've been going with is the idea that the Russians and the Ukrainians made a deal in Minsk. It was the Minsk Accords 2014, and the Ukrainians just refused to abide by it. Now, this man is saying that Russia forced them to agree to it, and therefore perhaps they don't really have to follow through. Let's hear some more.
But the use of military force had reduced the support for Russia in Ukraine, and it refused to follow through with the deal and doubled down on its integration with the Western nations. With the previous attempt ending in failure, in 2022, Russia deployed its forces to fix this mistake. Here was the plan. Most of the Ukrainian army was deployed near the Russian border, but Russia had established full control over Belarus. If Russia launched a surprise attack on Ukraine's capital and toppled its government, the Ukrainian military would be paralyzed and the Russian forces could cross the border and take over the country. But once again, the plan did not work. The previous use of military against Ukraine had made many people in the country hostile towards Russia, which was not part of the plan. The attempt to topple Ukraine's government failed, and the Russian move to occupy the country quickly ended in a stalemate.
And again, here we point out that he says nothing at all about the 8 years of conflict with shelling of the Russian civilian population in the Donbass. Been recorded. You can watch Patrick Lancaster in going back 8 years to prove that, yes, the Ukrainians have been violently trying to get rid of the Russians to force them to leave so they can own all of that territory. That is not mentioned at all in this gentleman's perspective.
Making the first stage of the invasion a failure. In conclusion, the specific composition of the Russian government makes it biased towards using military force for solving its problems. Therefore, it tends to give its military missions that it is not good at. This partially explains why Russia sent its military to invade Ukraine in 2022 and why the Russian military is now struggling to achieve its goals. Although some of the military operations did not do much good for Russia as a country, they did benefit the Russian government, which brings us to the second reason. In 1999, Vladimir Putin managed to maneuver himself to the position of the president of the Russian Federation.
managed to maneuver himself. Oh boy.
Post he took to keep, and he knew just how to do that. Russia had a lot of oil. During President Putin's first term, he managed to double the amount he exported, and during the following decade, the price of oil grew more than 8 times. This gave President Putin a lot of money to spend on expanding Russia's economy. During his first term, the Russian economy grew on average in double digits a year. This gave President Putin a great approval rating, and he was re-elected with more than 70% of the vote. During Putin's next term, there was more oil money at hand, which resulted in a higher economic growth and a strong approval. Due to the term limits set by Russia's constitution, this time Putin had to share power with one of his allies. The economic performance for the third term was not as spectacular due to the 2008 economic crisis. This resulted in the reduction of some public support, but not enough to deny Putin a re-election to president. But the old strategy was breaking down. Putin was good at selling oil, but almost anyone was capable of doing that. So why should Putin be supported for another term? Fewer and fewer people could answer this question. Putin could use the state's resources to keep his ratings artificially high, but genuine support for him was entering dangerous territory.
Doesn't that sound like Biden's predicament right now? They've been using state resources to keep his popularity high since before he was elected, and he's starting to have this fall in his popularity.
Enter the Ukrainian crisis of 2014. Ukraine had a Russian-leaning president, but by that time he had lost much of his support and he was ousted from power, which would eventually result.
He was ousted from power. It does say nothing about the Maidan revolution or any of that. Ousted from power by whom? Well, according to him, it was the Ukrainians that said, you got to go.
In the election of a Western-leaning president. But not all was lost for Russia. It was not the first time a pro-Western president had come to power in the country. Last time he was replaced with a pro-Russian president, and this could happen again this time. So Russia could just wait until the next election. But President Putin had a different agenda. He used the unrest in Russian-speaking Crimea to send his military and annex the region into Russia. This ruined the relations with Ukraine and many other nations and resulted in sanctions imposed on Russia. The Russian economic growth slowed down, growing only 25% in the 8 years after these events compared to the 120% before them. But this also resulted in President Putin's popularity soaring. By taking Crimea, he had finally given the people a new reason on why they should support him. You see, people, Russia is threatened by the forces from the outside who seek to weaken it, and only President Putin can oppose them. Just look how he so cunningly snatched Crimea away from the enemy. This allowed for Putin to easily win a re-election to his 5th term. But as time passed, taking Crimea became less and less relevant and could not keep the approval high. So in order to secure his 6th term, President Putin needed to demonstrate that only he could deliver a major victory. Of course, this time he had to trump the taking of Crimea and decided to bring all of Ukraine into the fold. The achievement would give another boost to Putin's approval, and as Russian forces started moving towards Ukraine, the approval indeed began to rise and reached 83% by the time of making this video. In conclusion, Vladimir Putin needed to have the Russians think that they needed him to rule the country. During his first 3 terms, he used the rising oil prices to provide Russia with economic prosperity. But this strategy became obsolete. Then he decided to convince the people that only Putin could defeat Russia's enemies. For this, he needed to show great victories abroad. Annexation of Crimea in 2014 provided him with a large boost in popularity, but it wore off, and Putin needed an even greater victory. This time he wanted to duplicate the Crimea scenario by taking over all of Ukraine.
All right, there's a few more minutes, but you get the point. Each story is telling us that Vladimir Putin is using these events to enhance his and keep himself in power. And there's no other reason for the invasions, he could have waited till the next election, and a pro-Russian president probably would have been elected, according to E's story. I kind of doubt that if his premises are correct, that people are turned off by the Russians because they invaded the last time. But anyway, isn't it interesting that this man, who's basically a historian and does a fantastic job of documenting battles and history of warfare, has this particular perspective that, it's not about all the things that we talk about. It's not about oil. It's not about the Nord Stream gas pipeline. It's not about the Western banks. It's not about corruption. It's not about the bioweapons theory. It's not about anything, according to him, except for this is President Putin trying to hold on to his reins of power for another election. And that's pretty much what I wanted to share today. I hope you all enjoyed that. And just let it percolate that there's people around the world that think this way. And very interesting. Okay, thanks everybody. Appreciate your being with me, and turn it back over to Andy.
All right, John O'Loughlin at screamingaspreys.com. Make sure you support. Here, let me pull it up on the screen again. You support John. Once again, you can, as you scroll down, you get his video stream here on his website and his past broadcasts. And you can also buy his book. He wrote about his dad's work with Saxa. And you can also become a Patreon. So make sure you go to screamingaspreys.com and check that out. Thank you, John, for kicking off the last day of the week here. We appreciate all the hard work and insights you're bringing to the research here at Neighborhood News.
All right, Andy, you guys carry on, and everybody have a great weekend. I'll see you Monday.
All right. You can also find John at McDuff Lives on YouTube. He has 3 different channels. So just whichever one McDuff Lives, 1, 2, or 3, make sure you go and subscribe to those. He gets content banned regularly, and that's why he has 3 different channels.
Come on, man.
The powers that be, they like to control the narrative as much as possible, and that's something we're seeing with the Ukraine-Russia conflict. It's like there's disinformation, Russia disinformation, there's U.S. disinformation, there's Ukrainian disinformation. We don't know what's going on, and that's why we're here at neighborhoodnews.com, neighborhoodnewsstudio.com, to check it all out. And before we sign off on McDuff Lives, I just want to say we got the broadcast going the rest of the day today. Thank you, John, once again for kicking it off this morning. But we got George Webb coming up next at 12 p.m. We got Protect the Nest with Amber Connor, Tara Starr, and Carol McIntosh coming on at 2 p.m. after George Webb. And then Addy Ads at one Addy Ads on Twitter is making his debut here at neighborhoodnewsstudio.com. So make sure you stay tuned on our website. But did you get it taken care of? You get the streams taken down here? So as we're going to be waiting for while we wait for George Webb and Jesse Hall on this wonderful Friday afternoon. I'm gonna go through George Webb's Twitter. He's gonna be digging into